international weekend with competition provided not only by Med and Calpe, but also by crews from Oxford Brookes University in the UK. And we also bring you sailing. It's the laser dinghies, which have been taken to the water for a series of regattas off Western Beach. But here's the rowing. The first of the regattas that we feature is the Norwich Union Challenge Cup. This was Saturday evening, 1 mile course, and the Yolas for women. Calpe and Med each with one crew in this event. To the right of your picture, that's the ladies from Calpe, the ladies from Med to your left. And as you can appreciate already, in the opening stages of this regatta, Calpe opening something of a gap. The Calpe ladies have been stronger than the Med ladies throughout the season. This the last of the regattas for them, and they looked as though they were going to continue their winning streak and stamp their authority, at least over the ladies' crew. Clear water now between the two boats. As the angle comes round, we were taking these shots, in fact, from the Calpe Rowing Club, and as they arrive more or less parallel to our position, you can appreciate the margin between the two boats, approximately a couple of lengths. The Calpe crew, Lena Baglietto, Anna Vella, Stacey Grech and Sharon Davidson, with Erika Budaram as cocks. Going into the final stages of the regatta they won quite comfortably in the end in a time of 7 minutes and 22 seconds. Reasonable weather conditions, as you can see, for Saturday evening. It was to be a lot worse for the Sunday morning, but there were still a couple more regattas scheduled for the Saturday, and these were in the Jimmy Galliano Challenge Cup. There, a shot of the Calpe ladies victorious on their way back to the club. As we move to the first of the finals for the Galliano Cup, I say it's the first of the finals because there was a B final, a consolation final between Calpe and Med. The other two crews competing here were from Oxford Brookes, and it's Med taking a quick lead in a rearranged course, just 750 meters, finishing outside the two clubs. Calpe trying to make up the ground, but by this stage they were about one length behind the Med crew, and it was a distance that was to remain constant for practically the entire regatta. Just the final meters, Med coming through in a time of 2 minutes and 26 seconds, and Calpe just a few seconds behind them. But then it was the turn for Oxford Brookes. They had brought over a couple of crews from the Oxford Brookes University, and they had some pretty strong oarsmen, including one who had competed in Henley, the Henley Regatta. And there they go. The water a little bit choppy, but not enough to worry the oarsmen unduly. But a lot of rivalry between these two crews, particularly since the crew furthest from picture was the B crew, and they comprise Watchorn, Reynolds, Williams and Curry, with Douglas as cocks. Their winning time 2 minutes and 24 seconds. The advantage of finishing in front of the clubs is that it's more comfortable for the onlookers, and quite a few spectators following from the vantage points, both on the North Mole and from the Med and Calpe clubhouses. There we see the two Oxford Brookes crews coming in. But so too Sunday morning, and the first of the regattas in much worse weather conditions, as you can see. This was a veterans regatta in Yolas over 1 kilometre. One crew from Med, one from Calpe. Med starting strongly, but Calpe pulling away quite quickly to establish something of a lead. Their crew, Brian Francis, Tony Teuma, Jimmy Alcantara and David Dumas, Erika Budaram as cocks. They opened an early lead and never looked back, in fact extending that lead as they went into the final stages and winning comfortably in 3 minutes and 47 seconds. Our thanks go to Jib Sport for taking us on their boat to film these pictures, both on Saturday evening and Sunday. so we can provide some better coverage from the water for a change as opposed to just the finishes from the mole. And we move to the second of yesterday morning's regatta. This was the Forestier Walker Challenge Cup. This is for maiden crews, oarsmen who have yet to win a major regatta. And 2 crews from Med, 3 from Calpe. The real race was happening closest to the detached mole between the first Calpe crew and the first Med crew. You could just see them there, the top of your picture. That's the Calpe crew in contention. To the left, you can just see the front of the boat of the Med crew, who had established something of a lead. Then came the 3 Calpe boats. The second Med crew was quite a way back. But the winners were Med, this crew of Ian Viñales, Karel Magnasco, Gina De Aro and Christopher Rodriguez, with Mark Hemy as cox, 6:25 their winning time. The second crews rowed the Festival Challenge Cup. There we see them very close, possibly the closest of the regattas, particularly in the first half. Both crews matching one another stroke for stroke. The weather conditions getting worse and worse. Quite a swell, as you can appreciate, and also very strong wind against the oarsmen, making the 2,000 meters that they were rowing quite an ordeal. That's the Calpe second crew. And they were behind coming into the closing stages. Med managing to put on a spurt in the latter half, which gave them a little bit of a lead. There you can appreciate the difference between the 2 boats. The Med crew of Jimmy Valerino, Peter Buttigieg, Nicholas Viñales and Sigurd Haviland, senior at 1, Sigurd Haviland junior as cox, winning through in a time of 8 minutes and 2 seconds. The winning distance approximately a length and a half to 2 lengths. Thankfully the boats reaching relatively calmer waters as they got inside the North Mole. The worst bits that they have to negotiate being the entrances to the harbour. But so to the climax of the weekend, the Triai Challenge Cup. And here we had the 2 Oxford Brookes crews, 1 crew from Calpe and 1 crew from Med, their respective first crews. Calpe getting off to a pretty poor start, immediately falling behind. Med, on the other hand, getting off very well indeed. There we see them ahead of both the Oxford Brookes crews, a position that they enjoyed for the first stage of the race. The Oxford Brookes gradually ate into their lead and overtook them. But it was exciting stuff between these 3 crews. Calpe never really in contention. But the 2 Oxford Brookes crews beginning to pull away from Med in the latter stages, and eventually it was Oxford Brookes B crew again winning in 8:03. As we move to the prize giving, coxless pairs winners Gavin Griffin and Nick Viñales from the Med Rowing Club. Single sculls, Stuart Bensadong finally managing this season to get the better of Leslie Grech. Tyra Moreno and Leslie Grech for the first time inter-club crew, and they won the double sculls, beating the Oxford Brookes oarsmen. These are the winners of the ladies regatta for the Norwich Union Challenge Cup. Jimmy Galliano's Challenge Cup final winners, that was Oxford Brookes B. These are the veterans from Calpe who won the Barclays Challenge Cup on Sunday morning, and the youngsters from the Med Rowing Club, who are no longer maiden oarsmen. They've now won their first major event. The Festival Cup winners, the Med second crew, and finally the winners of the main event of the weekend, the Triai Challenge Cup, and that's Oxford Brookes University B once again. But very successful rowing. There were also a couple of trophies for the season overall. Patrick Cavesuto, Junior Oarsman of the Year. This is the Oarswoman of the Year, Natalie Wall from the Med Rowing Club, Patrick from Calpe, and finally the Senior Oarsman of the Year, Stuart Bensadong from the Med Rowing Club. But the overall trophy for the season, the Paul Galvarino Challenge Cup, that went to Med by quite a convincing margin, the end of what's been an excellent season for them. Nigel, it's been quite a memorable weekend's rowing, hasn't it?
Yes, it's been a superb weekend. Unfortunately, we haven't been helped by the weather, but some imaginative course changing by our racing secretary managed for us to be able to get all the regattas in this weekend. We've had outside competition from Oxford Brookes, who have recently had success in the Henley Regatta, so it's been very stiff competition. The racing has been very close, and the honours have been divided.
Well, possibly one thing which has been highlighted by many of the speakers at the presentation ceremony was the new relationship that seems to exist between Calpe and Med, and this seems to have been epitomised on the water by the fact that we've had the first mixed crew with an oarsman from Calpe and one from Med competing and actually winning. How happy are Garra about that?
Well, this is something that Garra has been trying to do for the last 3 years. In the past, what we've had is that either a crew from the Med or the Calpe used to represent Gibraltar when we competed internationally. We've tried to change this philosophy by saying that a Garra squad must choose the best oarsman in each category. And the results have been seen today when there have been 2 crews that have been made up from Calpe and Med. And it proves the point that they've managed to actually win and beat the visiting crew from Oxford Brookes. This must be the way forward, and it was especially gratifying for me personally to see this happen this weekend.
And it also, of course, helps with the overall atmosphere between the 2 clubs now that we're neighbours and now that we're all here together in the same part of the harbour.
Yes, this was something that's just been highlighted by the Minister for Sport, where whilst the competition on the water is still very, very stiff, it was very gratifying to see crews from both clubs coming to get off their boats and actually congratulating each other for their successes and commiserating when the teams have lost. So yes, it's good for the development of the sport. I think it'll be good for the development of the Calpe and the Med also.
Perhaps a little bit surprising that none of the Spanish crews materialised. They didn't come to participate. That's perhaps the only low point in this weekend from Garra's point of view?
Yes, you know, our relationship with the Spanish clubs has been a good one. Unfortunately, they're not always that reliable, and this is why we've had to look further afield for our competition. I'm also informed that the Spaniards are having their national championships this weekend, and it's made it more difficult to have any representation from Sevilla and Malaga, which we get our usual competition from. We were promised that the crew from La Linea was going to compete in the second cruise race, but I understand that they've not been able to make it because the weather conditions haven't been good.